will be hearing colleagues from the Intercultural Justice and Peace Commission. I don't know if you're hearing us already, and we will have 10 minutes to hear from them what has been identified in this world of corporations and human rights and corporate capture in terms of risks and challenges in these 10 minutes. And then we will have some space for a round of questions and answers. So we want to welcome you. It's too bad that you could not join us in person, but we truly appreciate your effort there to join us online. Can you see the audience from there? Okay, that's wonderful. So,
Bueno, buenos días. Mi nombre es Javier
My name is
Otero.
Javier Otero. We provide professional services as a territorial liaison for the departments of Chocó and Antioquia. And I'm here with our colleague. Thank you and good morning. Thank you for the opportunity of being here. And I'm part of the legal team for this ecclesial group of peace and justice. I'm Gabriel Santiago. Thank you. We thank you for the invitation. We, as an organization who defends human rights, and we advocate, we've been working for 36 years. And we would like to share with you in this 10 minutes that we have a specific case that which was the eviction, territorial eviction as a result of paramilitarism and the benefits of private companies for cattling to expand the agricultural plot of land and Urbarado in the lower Atrato River. For us, this is an emblematic case in terms of the counseling that we have provided and the accompaniment. We conducted this work jointly in the land and terrain with indigenous community and peasants who live in those communities and have been affected by the violence. And this type of violence has sought eviction or the displacement of these people for the benefit of national, transnational, and multinational companies. So in this regard, we would like to say that communities have faced adverse situation, but they have implemented protection mechanisms like humanitarian zones, environmental zones, with all the risk it entails because of the continuity of armed conflict. The communities are there and they face these events. They're forced to, sometimes they're prone to massacres, to bombings, and we have the maps here. And we would like to tell you that we have some confusion because the justice in Colombia has not favored these communities, but on the contrary, it has been a thorny path. My colleaga Javier will talk to you, my colleagues will talk to you about how the colleagues have had to insist and with a lot of frustration saying that there's no progress within the legal system to shed light on these events and to bring to justice those who are responsible for these deeds. Thank you, Santiago. As you can observe on the screen, we have the location where the Commission provides advice to the community. On the right-hand side, we have the location within the Department of Colombia. And here we have two humanitarian zones the Humanitarian Esperanza and the basin of Cuacarica, which has been affected since 1996 by this operation. We have another basin, the Portabrado, which is in Carmen del Darién, and we can see here 6 humanitarian zones: Caracol Díaz, Camelias, Alquinito Díaz, Andalucía, and Costa Sur. Humanitarian zones are self-protection mechanisms where the civil population safeguards their own integrity as well as other self-control, self-protection measures, which are spaces of civil population where they protect biodiversity, and they tried through some practice. They tried proposals different to mono crops, as single crops. They have oil palm, the expansion of banana trees also around these areas. In the Hiwamando, we have 3 humanitarian areas: Puerto Nuevo, Esperanza, and this most of this territory is in Carmen del Darién. Now, with respect to the protection that we've conducted on the territories that we've mentioned, we can highlight a series of legal actions that we have put in place. And in the first place, we have a class action, D025 of 2004, which was a class action where we declare the state of unconstitutional events in the displaced population during the violation to the human rights that have been defended by the Constitution. So this ruling, of course, protected those communities. However, it was not being able to be fully fulfilled. So protections were enhanced subsequently by the same constitutional court. The first of these protections was noted 005 of 2009, considering the protection of fundamental rights of the Afro-descendant company that is victim to forced displacement. And we follow up to the class action that had been filed in 2004. Then they issue another notification, Auto 1384 of 2010. They do not only follow up, but they, in this sense, this ruling provides a special characterization, and these subjects, these communities, are subjects for special constitutional protection. And in addition to this, there is a clause about the constitutional Article 13, which talks about equality, where it says that these communities should be, the protection should be reinforced. Another aspect that raises concern, especially in areas around Carmen del Darién and Murindo, Antioquia, the mining in Cerros del Katuma, Cerros. There was a ruling. They stopped this claim that they wanted to exploit the Cerro. There are some actions from the company, and to be able to give you a little bit more information, to be able to develop their own business in the territory, they changed their name. So Muriel Binning Company to another mining company, which is a subsidiary also, Cobre SAS, and this mining company has been trying to not fulfill. They've been the the demands to provide continuity to the exploration and exploitation. Right now, this has what the company has generated. They have affected the Embera peoples, and they are affecting the social fabric of these people. These are the borders between Carmen del Dariel and Murindó, and the area affected is all these populations in those little black dots around this territory. It seems that this is extraction of over 200 minerals, and it implies the association of many companies to really develop and extract these metals. They focus on copper and gold. There are around 27 mining titles that have been requested, and titles granted, 12 titles that have been granted already in this area. We need, as a conclusion, we need, well, some mining companies, what they do, they change their name, their trade name, so they have no problems when they continue exploiting these areas or this. We believe that this affects the environment significantly, and clearly they should not only fulfill the requirements established by the law, but they should consider these communities that have been victim or have been affected by this type of mining activities. Santiago, would you like to add something? Well, Javier, I would like to share that regarding this concrete event on this territory, that my two colleagues, the Jai Katuma, Cerro Jai Katuma, the communities within their constitutional rights, they resorted to summon an inter-ethnic consultation back in 2009, and it was a no against the mining activity, and this has been absolutely disregarded by the mining companies and the state. And something that is quite serious that happened after this 2009, in January 30, 2010, the Colombian army bombed surrounding areas of Embera people around Guayamba and that little mountain, affecting the community and announcing that they were protecting the company that wanted to intervene the territory or to mine the territory. So what I would like to mention, that there is a fundamental role by people of the community, especially women, who move to the mountain with their own children to protect the mountain. And that heroic action by these women really stopped the intervention at that time from this indigenous territory. We are talking of the Mantel del Norte project, and the concern really lies on the absence of guarantees to protect this interethnic territory. There's a huge environmental damage that would be generated If this really goes to the Atrato River, which is Atrato River has been subject to rights, and we are talking here about an open pit mine over 30,000 hectares. But in addition to that, this this project touches on the Department of Chocó and Antioquia. So what they right now it's the mining company who is acting duly without no prior consultation, and this the way they operate is not official. So our colleagues of the commission, thank you very much. I'm sorry we don't have the possibility of being able to go in depth with the work that you have conducted to really stop all these abuses of power. So we will have a round of questions. Obviously, we will ask you to be very concrete and brief in the questions, because this isn't the right moment to address different cases or share experiences. So let us be really sharp and brief in those questions with in this example of corporate capture. When they talked about the mechanisms in place, they talked about, so please raise your hand and I will be in charge of the time to see how much Peter and the colleague here. These questions cannot be answered right now, but there's an important topic here that I would like to highlight. Instead of talking about corporate capture, we should talk about an alliance between the state and the corporation. So there are times where there is a co-opting when state entities act against the interest of the state itself. So we see how it affected the entire the family. We can see at the Attorney General's office. We can see how they show these people their framework of terror to allow this alliance to happen. This is used to defend economic interests, and the damage is the peace process that could dismantle the rights, and so that's food for thought. With respect how these companies were financed internationally. The structure was built in Arauca. So they are operating within the battalion where they were conducting massacres on behalf of multinational corporations. Another topic that highlighted Amanda, and we haven't really talked about it, but just to comment on this topic, multinational is a fictitious entity. They don't really exist within the country. There is a company, the legal name is just a registration. So when the company is under the threat of being investigated, they disappear. So how can we break that? How can we unveil those companies? It would be great for and arbitration tribunals. The companies do appear. So how can we do to acknowledge sort of that link? We could recognize that link. So there are a series of topics here because we would have so much subjects for a complete master's or a PhD. I have a question for Ramiro. Is he here? For Francisco. The question, currently you are trying to work on the mining code. have they acknowledged or recognized or the voice of all these people that you mentioned? And another question for Amanda. We've always had this concern whether you want the process, whether the Colombia, why where there was the indemnity where the Santurban. You're talking about the Paramo, the wetlands of Santurban. Here, there's another question. Good morning. I have some concerns, and I don't know who might be able to answer. In Boquerón, there's a ruling and the indemnity and the resettlement of a community. But back in 2021, it was canceled. It established that they will not be resettled, but they will do socioeconomic planning. So those communities that have no guarantees, no food security, because of all the impacts that they have had for mining companies. So they haven't. The problem hasn't been solved for them, and in terms of the impacts and the damage. So the ruling that was issued against the mining companies, and Drummond has stated that we have already paid the money to the trust. So where are the guarantees with respect to the ruling that has been already issued to oversee the rights of these communities? That's a specific case, but maybe we could assess that during our clinics or legal workshops. Good morning. I have a question. When we talk about co-opting, we know that it's really easy at municipal level. Council members, the mayor's office, local mayors, they tend to be co-opted by mining companies. Is there any legal tool which you can limit the intervention of mining companies within the municipal intervention in every and each of the social programs? Because this maybe happens in other regions. In Jericho specifically, this happens with every process from the sports, cultural, art related events. All the communities and inhabitants of the territories are subjected to receiving benefits, because if the father has their son in the municipal band, they're not going to tell their son not to participate because he doesn't have the means to give the child the music instrument. Or so from a legal standing, is there any tool in place so we can limit that appropriation of the mayors in favor of mining companies? Let's close with this final question. But I also agree with that question because the companies have talked about social responsibility, social corporate responsibility, and they go in. So I do, Amanda, you could shed some light on that topic. Well, my question is a bit more simple. Where I hear the people, I hear that a lot of people there's so many mining titles around the country. Those mining titles, because we as communities sometimes say that miners are fighting for the titles. So I would like to know what are the pros and cons of having or not a mining title in the area, to have clarity, because I don't know exactly. I have no clarity because I understand. I would like to know exactly whether that mining title will bring some benefits to the areas where those titles have been granted. Would we take advantage of them? So, if you agree, we, Armanda, Francisco, Ludivina, are our colleagues from the Commission. So please go to answer the question briefly and to the point. Thank you for the questions. I'm going to talk about the indemnity of Red Eagle. There are two different rulings from arbitration tribunal. There was an indemnity against the Coro Minerals, and it was an awful ruling because Colombia had to pay a huge amount and the company another amount because they divided the topics in. I'm not a lawyer, but that's what I understood. In the case of Red Eagle, it's the company that has to pay the state. We won't have to pay anything there. And the second question about, I would like to make this call in the with respect the resettlement of which involves three coal mining companies in the municipality of El Paso in the department of Cesar. The process began in 2010, and it implied the Colombian Natural Resources, Drummond, and Prodeco, which is part of Glencore, to resettle all the families of a community it's called Latillo. It's a small community which was contaminated. They did away with the river. They harmed the river, but before 2010 and during the two governments of Alvaro Uribe, this was a place for paramilitaries. So the combination of this decision, the community did not have a political say. And so the women are really the ones that take the leadership. During this process, a lot of people died because of cancer. Then someone was killed. So CINEP, Acción Social, they accompany the process. A Dutch company supports also with a very ambiguous view towards the company. And at the end of the process, the company buys the leaders. They offer women to be drivers of the trucks that conduct of trucks. The company declares went into bankruptcy, and now CNR and Prodeco, just take your mining titles. They're now thinking about installing wind wind power and also solar panels. But with this, we need to act now. The peace agreement with the FARC, it has an article, and it was developed into a decree which it says works due to talks. So companies and corporations have always intervened in all communities. This is enforced, and there are huge contracts between the state and private companies, Ecopetrol, Postobon, companies like Argos, who is very good friends with President Petro, who are entering into agreements to conduct public works. So the tool is to ask Petro to suspend that decree, to annul that decree. How can you explain that somebody from Ecopetrol, an official from Ecopetrol who worked hand in hand with paramilitaries, now they are seen as the benefactors under the peace agreement with FARC? So there we need to see, we need to analyze that tool. And the last topic relates to the Vice Minister of Mines and Energy, Joana Rocha, on Friday in the public hearing in the Congress. She issued very good news that they're going to conduct an internal reform in the mining to modify the way in which mining titles are issued in the ethnic territories. And so they are conducting a process with the consultation table for reviews. The indigenous has taken great strides, and Colombian indigenous communities, they meet with all the ministries, all from indigenous government to country power, to ministers, and they're talking about how to really give these mining titles that would be for all territories, especially in Careperro or the territory that I visited when they were discovering and they're Japanese and Canadian companies extracting illegally because the indigenous, they thought they had a mining title and that would help them because they talked to them about royalties and employment. So please tell me if there's a company that doesn't need any employees. So this is co-opting again. The community division comes from a patriarchal view. Corporations are hierarchic, patriarchal units, and their only aim or objective has been established for 2 centuries, and it's to win money. So how to combat that perspective and how popular economy or what was called back in the 80s the local people's power in El Salvador, which is now distorted with the new discourses, but they don't reflect what's really happening. And this is also happening with our young people being involved in organized crime, which is organized, which is linked to gold mining. It's not illegal gold mining because that illegal gold always goes to the gold chains, which is refined in the state of Alabama or in Switzerland with the most important gold refining companies that create and produce gold blocks, which are the reserves of the different countries. So the country that really destroys mountains, people, they end up in gold bricks. The first question had to do. I supported the ministry Irene Vélez, but 90% of the government officials are Uribistas. So when she was changed, and the result is a text that's a lot of birds and butterflies. We are going to defend water, but it doesn't say how we're going to defend indigenous population, but we don't know how. So it is, but I don't see any good deeds that may come out of this. But what Amanda says, with this consultation table with the Afro movement and the indigenous movements and conditions are being established. The Constitutional Court, we're protecting a Yupa community, and now they're asking us to help them implement that ruling. And what our colleague talked about, whether it's good or bad, that a community has a mine in their territory. Let me state this as a business. Those things that you were asking about corporate social responsibility, everything they do, little schools, bridges and roads, we pay that. They don't pay that. They submit that, and it's been deducted from their income tax. But we, workers, we read the tax reform. It was in force for over 10 years. I'll give you an example. I hire you, and I pay you $1,000,000. That article states that if I hire you, and if you're a professional or a technician in mining, you need to have a title, otherwise you wouldn't be hired. But if I hire you, the tax authority should return 70% of your salary. So I pay you 1 million, but at the end gives me back 1.7 million. So everything signed in the union, everything is deducted. It's paid by me, it's not paid by the company. I pay the workers, I pay social. And then they bring paramilitaries, they make the hole, they damage the environment. For every $100 we pay them they pay in taxes, they pay 300. Would you like that business? Yes, that's the business of power, mining, and oil in the country. So if you like that, please let me know. But that's really the business. That's their business, the business they're in. For example, the accusation against Chiquita over 11,000 homicides, 4,000 people that disappear, with the people from Drummond, 4,300 people killed, around 45,000 evictions, and the environment destroyed, the area destroyed. That's what mining is about. 158 Kion, it's been changing. You need to look at the tax reforms and the statute. I don't remember exactly the number of that statute, but what impacts in the collective bargaining, for example, because there are only very few unions that have collective bargain, which are mining companies and oil companies. Everything paid is deducted from their income tax return. So it's a great business.
Thank you, Francisco. I don't know if our colleagues from the Intercultural Commission would like to add something to what we just heard or give any answers to the questions that we have on the table. Good question. Yes, the titles are rights that are given to the mining companies to extract and make use of the natural resource. However, as we heard from the previous colleague, this brings more cons than pros. The benefits are annulled because of all the environmental effects on the environment. And as he said, it does generate a job, but at which cost? Environmental cost, and especially and mostly, and companies are not given any remedies from the environmental damage that could be caused. So it brings more cons than pros, these mining titles in a company. Thank you. I want to mention that in CESAR, Drummond, in order to get the mining titles, did not consult the communities that live there, that are mostly African descendants. They were not consulted. So the procurement of all those titles and then the extensions that they have had are biased because they have breached and not recognized the Colombian legislation in terms of protection to the communities in those territories, which are the true owners of that land. This exploitation also, the environmental harm and the harm to health, not only because of all the pollution and how water is taken from the communities for building roads, but also because all the buildup of waste. When the mining companies mine the coal in a certain area, they leave piles of toxic waste behind them. And that's what the community is left with. So the communities that should be planting and living from their crops and their animals cannot do that today. And on the other hand, they don't have the possibility to get a job or to be paid by a company because the locals are not hired by the multinationals. I also think that there's another possibility in terms of defense of the communities to file remedies and to see how we can come up with evidence and proof, because many of these cases concerning homicides and all these things are recognized in the justice and peace hearings by the commanders of the paramilitary groups. If we check all these information, all these decisions, and all these paramilitary groups. Juan Andres Alvarez was created exactly to operate in this mining corridor of El Cesar. And you have all the acknowledgments that they're there, and still the Attorney General's office has not done anything to collect these evidence so that they pay for their crimes. We have to look at the macro case 08 that was opened by the GEP, Special Justice for Peace, because in that we could go back to many cases that the Attorney General's office and the Courts of Justice and Peace have closed without giving them the importance and considering the seriousness that all these facts have. We're talking about genocide here against all of our communities. Okay, we are behind in our schedule and quite a lot. So one of the things that we can leave this session with, I mean, as a moderator, we won't have the time to analyze the different elements that we heard from in this session, but I want to give you these ideas. One, in the capacity building spaces, training, education spaces, we have to start looking more closely at the concern that we have regarding time, because something that we learned yesterday from Santiago is that, I don't know if he told you about how to tell the story, how important it is to narrate the facts. Did you get the link on these short video, Defending the Land, Defender la Tierra? So we will be sharing this link because that short video lasts 7 minutes, and it's a fundamental starting point to analyzing ourselves, to go into the details of each one of our cases in these fabric that is so tightly knit where you could spend your whole life. But the importance here is for us to have the structure, the mental structure of an umbrella. And there is something that Francisco mentioned that I find fundamental, which is the conceptual side of things. When he challenges the term co-opting, and there are some that have put on the table the need to analyze that we are operating under corporate states. Another element to see whether something is good or bad. There are processes whereby, after some degree of analysis and study, they come and say, oh, I cannot go and say mining is bad. Zero mining, bans. Because if we do that, we would be losing other spaces where we are disputing the truth, where we are. There are other processes that have moved forward so well that we just understand that we have to stand on the side. It's either white or black. There are no grays here. So I apologize here for using the colors black or white. I'm not talking about whether the color is bad or not. It's just, being radical. That's why I'm talking about all the colors in between black and white. This to clarify that I'm not doing this in negative terms, of course. Okay, to wrap up this part, Eduardo Galeano, and some others have heard this story, but Eduardo Galeano told us that this cook gathered together all the birds in the world, dogs, hens, turkeys, all of them. And he asked them, what sauce would you like for people to use when they're eating you? And a humble chicken made a step forward and said, but we don't want to be eaten. And the cook told her, wait, hold on. That's out of the question. I'm asking you, what sauce would you prefer when you're served? And he says that that's how democracies operate in Latin America, and I would say that also in the global south. And one thinks, how far can we relate ourselves, or to what extent can we relate ourselves with that cook? And in identifying the cook, you can come across local authorities, national authorities, and then a whole array of different instances in this world system, the United Nations, and you name it yourself. And then you see the World Bank and the IMF. And Galeano told us that's the most democratic body that exists. So we have to evaluate the starting points. We have to evaluate those very concrete analyses that we have to develop in order to start designing strategies and the whole world of possibilities that opens up to us from the system itself, where windows of opportunity have been created, where we can say, oh, rapporteurs, yes, let's go do some advocacy at the Ministry of Mines. There can be 1,000 tasks stemming from that. Which ones to prioritize? That's a big question mark. And another question that we have to ask ourselves is, whether we are under the spell of a system. Aren't we prioritizing this from the grassroots organizations and all the way up? Because looking at this process, you can spend your whole life in this other world that the system offers and that we value. And of course, that homework has to be done. I'm not saying no to that. But when we speak of whether we have won cases before the international arbitration courts, there are many scholars that have been challenging this term of having won those cases, because we're spending so much public money in the consulting services, in everything that has to be contracted to go there and defend the state. So what's ideal, and by the way, there's an international mission that came to Colombia to assess all these cases, and the petition, or what is requested from this government concretely, was the following. Okay, we have to continue defending ourselves. Do it well, please. But the solution lies, the solution is to leave the investment protection agreements. The solution is to say no, period. So we will hear, oh, you don't know how many Swiss companies there are in Colombia. So the Swiss companies are going to leave the country. Okay, let them leave. Who are they harming by not, who are harmed by these companies not being in the country? And at last, I want to emphasize how important it is to look at things from our own conscience and hearts. And how is it that in this dispute for the truth in which we are, we will be able to convey the messages that we have to bring to our communities? A union member, this union member, when talking about the collective bargaining processes, etc., I was meeting with him and we went, point by point, analyzing them. What has the company given you for you to be working in the coal sector when you're aware that you are damaging the environment? And everything that, quote unquote, the company gives, we realized that it was all a lie. And the final point was, there are these scholarships, there are these scholarships that are offered. And we realize that it is very difficult to discuss the situation about the need to become professionals. We need to be out of this town because it's not a nice to be a peasant or to be called a peasant. We want to be university graduates. So we have all this concern for our children to go to university. So we had some reaction there. So I told this father, this union member, I am really sorry, but if I'm told that I can go to university at the expense of my father's lungs, because these workers working in a coal mine will get lung cancer, I don't think I want to attend. I don't think I want to go to university, period. I won't do that at the expense of my father's lung health. Because tomorrow, whatever salary I can get as a university graduate, I have to invest on my father's cancer treatment, or what is left of my life, or his life will be in a hospital. But how difficult is it to raise awareness regarding a system that is selling a different value to us? How can we fight these different values that they're trying to instill in us? Because people will do anything for money. And we can hear a lot of sayings around how everybody wants to have money. So this is like a chip that is planted in us. And I hope that by looking at this, we will be able to have conversations about advertising and marketing. Why is it that chicken broilers are always yellow and red? Because yellow and red are colors that make you feel hungry. So just imagine everything that we're seeing on TV and through advertising when we come to the cities. What do we want to eat? What do we feel like we want to have? And why? We have to start discussions from different lenses that perhaps due to our involvement in other urgent matters, we have not been paying attention to. So let's finish our coffee break. Very quick stretching of legs. Very little time for self-care in this morning session, but it's worthwhile. So we can take advantage of it as much as we can.